You're wearing a sweater that was selected for you by the people in this room from a pile of stuff.
Okay. Happy Wednesday. Again, happy Wednesday. Welcome to She Became Visible. I am your host, Renee Steelman, and I have a special guest today, a guest that I told you about. If you're not prepared, that is entirely your fault, because I gave you multiple amounts of warning to get in your car, to give your children McDonald's French fries so they'll be quiet, or whatever you need to do so that you could listen to this podcast live. But regardless, we're here. My special guest today is Lila Tueller. And Lila, I have to tell you, all week since we've been communicating, I have the song Layla in my head. I just keep singing it over and over. You've probably heard that before. It's not the same name, but it has the same rhythm. So I keep saying Layla. Yeah. So anyway, so Lila and I are going to be talking today about her journey. But I wanted to preface I wanted to preface our conversation with something that I was introduced to, which I thought was fascinating. And I love being introduced to knowledge that kind of makes my brain go, what? And I hate the fact that at my age, I'm just now finding out some of these things. But I was listening to a psychologist, and he was describing different forms of codependency. And one of the forms that he was talking about was the Greek mythology of Echo and Narcissus. And he explained how Echo in mythology was cursed. She was a very talkative, she had a beautiful singing voice. She was just a lovely little nymph. And but she offended, now this one psychologist said she offended Juno. I've heard other names of another goddess that she offended. And the curse that was put upon her was that she could no longer express her own feelings or any thoughts of her own. The only thing that could come out of her mouth was a repetition of what the other person was saying. And so I know. Isn't that amazing? So then she falls in love with Narcissus, who only loves himself. And she thinks that when she's repeating what he's saying, that he's telling her that he loves her as well. But he's basically saying, get out of my life. You're bugging me to death. And so he rejects her. And so she, he eventually dies of his own narcissism. She eventually dies of her rejection. But the premise to the mythology is the codependency. And immediately, which I'm sure, Lila, just from your reaction, the immediate thing I thought of was the role of women in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Yeah. And especially now that I have resigned my membership and I'm becoming more vocal on media, the comments that I'm hearing are echoes. They're echoes of things they've heard in conference. They're echoes of things they've been told in a sacrament meeting talk. They're not their own individual. They're just a line that we've heard. And I thought, what year did you go through the temple for the first time?
Oh gosh. Well, I was 18 years old when I got married. So I went through the temple in April of 1980.
Okay. So you went through the old ceremony.
Yes.
You had the old, And that was the first thing that popped into my head was Eve, the way it's depicted in the temple before 1990. Eve is doing what she knows to be the right thing to do. Like, she gets the whole plan. She understands the whole thing, and she's smart, and she's using critical thinking, and she's going, okay, I get it. I see what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to sacrifice this wonderful life that we have, and we're going to give up some of our pleasures. I got it. Adam's, twirling around in the pond. Exactly like Narcissist. He's looking into this pond of water. This is how it's depicted.
Gazing at himself.
Yes, gazing at himself. So amazing. And she's like, she takes the fall, right? She's like, okay, I'm going to do like all mothers do. We take the fall for everything else. And then her reaction, her punishment after that, just like Echo, was, I'm so sorry. I will never speak my own thoughts again. I will
Yeah,
never.
she gets shut down.
Gets totally shut
Completely
down.
shut down. Yeah.
And from that point on, she even is told, you can't even talk to God without going through Adam.
Right.
It was such a thing. And it reminded me of your story because, and I want you to share your story. As you mentioned, you got married at 18, which is, I mean, I remember at 18, I met my husband when I was 18, but I remember thinking, I really love you. I don't want to get married right now. But I really, and I was so happy that he was getting ready to go on a mission because I was like, that gives me 2 years to live my own life. But I have a granddaughter that'll be 17 in December. I can't imagine her getting married next year. Can't imagine.
Well, it was ridiculous.
So tell us now, you graduated from high school and you went to BYU. BYU
right.
or Provo?
I went to BYU Provo.
Okay. And introduce yourself a little bit. Tell everybody a little bit about your lineage because that kind of puts everything in perspective as well.
Okay. Well, both of my parents are converts to the church. Neither one of them have any Mormon heritage whatsoever. Neither one of them had any siblings or parents that ever joined. So they were the only ones. And my father went on to be, we lived in Virginia and he worked at the Pentagon at the time, and he worked with Ezra Taft Benson. So somehow he made an impression on it wasn't President Benson back then. He was just an apostle, I think, at the time. But that's how my dad got called to be a general authority. And I was 7 years old. And we moved out west to Utah then. And so I was raised with a general authority father who love him to death. I mean, I really do. He's passed on now, and so is my mother. Mm-hmm. But, he was, I would say, textbook narcissist, I mean, as good as that can look, because he was very sweet in many ways. But yeah, he was, I think the whole structure of the church and, the patriarchy and all of that just fed right into that. And it fed his narcissism, and he just became one of them. And even though I don't know that they ever really accepted him as one of them, he believed he was one of them. Right. Because he didn't have the, generational Mormonism in him. So he was a little rusty on something. He didn't know exactly what was expected of him. But I digress. What the main thing is that I was child number 6. And so I was raised in the church. My parents had joined before I was born. Okay. So I was raised in the church with, like I said, my dad got called when I was 7. So from then on, I had this general authority father, and he was quite popular back then. I don't know if young kids who would even know his name now, but back then he was.
I remember his name. Yeah. I'm old enough to remember. Yeah.
He was charismatic. He had he was fun to listen to. And so where were we going with that?
You were just talking a little bit about your genealogy of how you grew up and where your training came from.
So we moved around a lot because in my dad's case, they didn't send him on a mission as a mission president first. They did it after he was called to be a general authority. After he was called, he was sent to Florida. So he was a mission president in the Alabama, Florida mission at the time. I was 9 years old when that happened. And then after that, he got called to San Diego and was mission president there. And that was when I was a teenager, just in high school. So I had to leave my high school where I had gone my freshman and sophomore year and moved to San Diego for my junior and senior year while my dad was mission president there. And, that was tough on me. And one of the things that the way I was raised was my father being, who he was, he wanted little girls to be seen and not heard.
Right.
I was told to be quiet. I wasn't allowed to have an opinion. I wasn't allowed to speak out. And I can't even tell you what that did to me, because I'm very opinionated. Like, I have thoughts, and I wasn't allowed to speak them. If I did, I was told that I was being impudent, and I was sent to the corner to think about it.
Right.
And I'd sit in that corner for all day, because I didn't think that I had done anything wrong by voicing my opinion, but I was not allowed to do that in my home. So I was supposed to just go along with the flow and never have a dissenting voice.
Right.
And that sort of just sat inside my psyche and festered for years and years. I thought, one of these days, I'm just gonna blow. Like, it was a pressure cooker.
Yeah. You were number 6 of 9? Is that correct? There were 9 kids in your family,
Right.
So, did you ever have a discussion with your mom, because they weren't members of the church, living in Virginia? Did she originally plan on having 9 children? Would they have only had 3 until they moved to Utah and were converted and were told to multiply and replenish the earth? Did she ever discuss that?
Well, they were converted before they ever lived in Virginia. They lived in San Diego while my dad was in the Navy.
Oh, okay.
That's when they were converted.
Okay.
That was when they had 3 kids, or my mom was pregnant with her 3rd child.
Okay.
Then they moved out to Virginia for that whole experience there. And I think my mother did tell me that her mother hated raising children, and let her know that.
Oh.
And she was very high stress, anxiety ridden person. Her mother didn't like all the children running around. She only had 3 kids. And I think my mom would have ended with 3 or 4, probably. But once, they joined, they felt like it was their duty. They should bring, how we were taught. There's all these spirits up there that need bodies. So we need to provide those bodies for them.
Right. That's so interesting. I had a conversation with someone the other day, and I said something about that, and they said, that was never taught. And this is someone my age. Goodness. And I was like, are you kidding me? Do you not remember that ceremony where you held hands across an altar and were told to multiply and replenish the earth? And then, like you said, the stories of the, little baby spirits that were up there waiting to go into a good LDS home.
Yes.
Like, are you honestly denying that happened? I mean, it was the ultimate of denial, blind denial, that I was like, oh, wow, you will say anything to defend this religion that you believe in. But anyway, It was very interesting. So, wow. Okay. And I know you have, out of the 9, there's 4 girls. Is that correct?
There are 5 girls and 3 boys.
Girls. Okay.
Or sorry, my mother had 8 children, adopted 1.
Oh, okay.
One of them was adopted, and he was a Samoan boy.
And this was was he the baby of the family, or?
No, he was just younger than me.
Oh.
And then my mom had 2 children after. I mean, he was adopted after the fact, after we had the 8 kids.
Right.
And he was adopted, but he was already like 13 years old. We thought he was 8 years old, but he was older than we thought.
Wow.
Yeah, he didn't have a birth certificate. He was literally straight out of the, Western Samoa, I guess is what it was, and didn't have a pair of shoes, didn't have a pair of pants, had never seen running water, didn't know anything. He only knew a few words, never seen snow before. I mean, it was really fun to bring him here and just show him everything.
Right.
He was so just amazed at the world, and that we had TV and electric light. We just sit there and turn it on and off and just watch and just be amazed. It was so cute.
That is amazing. And I'm sure that whole story of how you found him and invited him into your family, that could be a whole nother hour.
Whole other story.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you got married at 18. To
be fair, I was 2 weeks shy of 19.
I love that. I love that reference. Yeah. 2 months shy of 19. Yeah. Or 14, whatever. Yeah. That sounds. And did you meet your husband at BYU?
I actually met him before I went to BYU. He lived in my older sister's ward.
Okay.
And she lined us up.
Okay.
So I met him that summer. I went to visit her, prior to me going to BYU. And she lined us up and we went on dates. I stayed there for like 9 days, I think, with my sister. And we spent the whole time together, he and I. So he basically just kind of swooped in. I never dated anybody else at BYU. It was just him, and boom, we got married that following spring.
Yeah. And he fit all the criteria?
Oh, yeah. He was the perfect. Yeah. He was a returned missionary, came from a great family, really strong LDS, very well known in the community. Father who had been state president and, you know, was, they were just stalwarts.
Okay.
Yeah. He was everything that I thought that I wanted, you know, everything. Yeah. And he kind of sort of just swooped in and took over. Basically, I didn't have to do anything by myself. He took me by the hand and was like, I will take care of you. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to think. You don't need to, you know,
work or
anything. Work. Yeah. You can just I'll take care of everything. And
which at 18, 2 months short of 19, is every fairy tale. I mean, that's Cinderella right there. It's like, wow, I can just go home and decorate and you know, it's, I mean, that's an 18-year-old's dream. I mean, for some,
right.
You know,
well, it was at the time.
Yeah.
And it stayed the dream for about 2 years. And then I started to grow up a little bit and I started to speak and I started to find my voice a little bit. And I would say, because he was also just like my dad. They were two peas in a pot and best friends.
Yeah.
So he was like that. And I thought, no, wait a minute. I have an opinion here. And I don't actually agree with you about that.
Right.
Oh, that was not acceptable. You know, not acceptable. And so we just did this for, you know, we were married for 33 years. And it was like that the whole time. Yeah. It was really rough. I mean, I shouldn't say the whole time. There were good times mixed in where, you know, it would work out okay and we didn't fight for a few days. But because I was an outspoken person and I had thoughts in my head and I didn't agree with everything I was spoon-fed, the older I got, the more difficult our relationship became because I was out of bounds now. I wasn't the girl that he thought I should be.
Exactly.
Yeah. I wasn't doing all the Betty Crocker things and he was not like that.
That's the hardest thing for me to understand is that now that science has proven and the data is out there telling everyone that, you know, your brain is not even formed until you're about 25 years old. And so many of us were married and had 4 or 5 kids by the time we were 25 years old. Yeah. So to finally come into yourself at that age and to start to set back and kind of go, oh, I'm not okay with that. And then when you're in an environment that's saying, and it doesn't matter because your voice is not even meant to be heard, it's very, very kind of startling. And I think that's where a lot of these young people that are leaving the church, they all seem to be in that age range. Like they're like 24, 25, and they start to go, wait, what? And they're, you know, and if they're fortunate enough to not be in a situation where they've got 5 kids by that time or something like that, they can make some changes. But if you're in a situation like you were, especially, didn't you say that like he was kind of a fanboy of your dad's? He was kind of like, I snatched Hartman Rector's daughter. What the heck?
On his mission, we had never met. On his mission, he would listen to my dad's tapes and his talk tapes. And he had this, you know, complete, like you said, this fanboy relationship where it was just, he adored my father. And when he came home from his mission, he knew that one of Hartman Rector Jr.'s daughters lived in his ward. And she said, hey, I've got a single daughter, a single sister who's just graduated from high school. And it's funny because it didn't take him 5 minutes. He was all over it. And he was sending me pictures and stuff. And I had just graduated from high school. And I was like, okay, whoa. Wait a minute. Yeah. But it was relentless. He wasn't not going to let me date anyone else. He was not going to let me have any kind of a college experience. It was like, boom, I was his.
Yeah.
And he loved my dad. And so it was like, I even knew when we got married, I knew that he was really marrying my dad.
Exactly.
That's really what it was about.
Like you're standing at the wedding ceremony, and he and your dad are over in the corner. I'm just making up this story. And you're kind of like, hello, excuse me.
Yeah, excuse me, hi.
Yeah.
I'm the bride.
Did you want to kiss the bride or him? Or, yeah. Oh, that's funny.
That's really, I knew that because he would spend, that the day we got married, you're supposed to go on your honeymoon, right?
Yeah.
Well, he knew that the next day my dad was going to be moving this giant mahogany table that Utah, what's the name of it? Hotel Utah was selling all their stuff because it was now going to be the church office building. Or the Joseph Smith building.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah.
So they were selling off all this stuff. There was a mahogany table about 20 feet long. It was massive. And my dad was going to be moving that into his dining room because he bought it. And my husband, this is on our wedding night, he found out my dad was going to be doing that the next day. He canceled our plans to go on our honeymoon so that he could be there to help my dad move this table, to be like, I don't know, like the favorite son-in-law or something, to be there on the spot to help out. And I was just like, I can't believe this. I can't.
Yeah.
And then, after that was done, we went on our honeymoon, and it was literally 3 days in a rainy Monterey and Carmel. And it was rainy and cold, and we literally hardly left our hotel room. And it was just such a letdown for me. I thought, that was not what I pictured it was going to be like, not at all. And that was just the beginning of how it went. It was my dad. And I came last, it was my dad. So I kind of resented the fact that I had this father that had all these fans, and that, who was I? I was just the daughter, but I was the way in for him,
Right.
So it just kind of was not, it wasn't what I had imagined.
No, and right from the very beginning, you saw like, oh, I see this whole, my whole life just flashed before my eyes. I can see what the future holds.
This is going to be.
Yeah.
This is going to be. And they were like this. They were best friends. My dad adopted him as if he was the favorite son, not son-in-law, son.
Yeah. Did your brothers ever comment on that? Were they ever like, oh, wait, let me call, whatever his name was, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
let's call Hal and see what he thinks. Sorry, Hal.
Yeah.
Husband's name. He's no longer with us. He passed away in 2017. So I don't want to speak too ill of him. He was a wonderful person in so many ways. He was a great father. He did a lot of really, really good things. So I don't want to trash on him. I'm just saying, from my perspective as the girl who was never allowed to speak, I married someone who was the same. He believed that same way. Exactly. And so it perpetuated that into my early youth. Well, I should say, my early 20s.
Right.
Into my 30s, 40s. I didn't leave until I was 53, 54. Wow. Yeah, and I'd had 7 kids, and gosh. I finally
what did you like as you were you had your how close are your kids? Like
they aren't super close. Brittany just turned 41 yesterday, which is shocks me. I'm like,
I know because I'm 41. It's like, how can you be 41 when I'm 41? Yeah.
Right. And then I have my youngest son is 19. So there's a real broad,
Okay.
The first few were a little closer, and then it spread out. I had some miscarriages in there.
Okay.
There's, 4 or 5 years apart, several of them.
Wow. So during that time, I'm sure that there were things that you thought with, the beautiful ability that we as women have of feeling guilty and not grateful for what we have. And so I'm sure there were thoughts of what's wrong with me? I should be so grateful. I've got this husband that goes to work. I've got a beautiful home. I've got healthy children. I'm not working. I can, go to lunch with my friends. Did you ever think, oh, I'm going to go back to school and get my degree, or I'm going to,
and I did go back
about that. Tell me about like things that you thought, well, okay, my kids are all in school now. I'm going to pursue some interests of my own. And then what happened with those?
Okay, well, because after my fourth child, I decided I was done having kids. And I made it very clear to my husband, I'm done. I know my limitations. I am barely making it right now with the 4 kids I've got. I can't do this anymore. Right. And he was like, well, what about all those spirits, that need to come down? And I said, they can go somewhere. I just don't think I can handle it. I'm here. Yeah. And because he was working and traveling a lot. And so I was home a lot doing it by myself. And to be honest, I didn't mind that because when he was gone, there was no fighting. I could do my own agenda. The kids would even say, when's dad going out of town? Because we would have fun, and then he would come home and it was back to the, Right. So after I had my 4th child, I said, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to be done. And I had a yard sale and sold all the stuff, the crib, the stroller, the car seat, the high chair, all the baby stuff. And I'm like, okay, now you need to go get fixed, is what I told him. Yeah. He absolutely would not do it. He said, that is wrong. I can't. And I said, so I need to go in now. I'm the one that's had all these babies. Now I'm supposed to go back under the knife. And this is a major surgery for a female. For you, it's a, in and out. What's the deal? Right. And he just wouldn't do it. He wouldn't do it. So I had all these rules. Okay. You need to practice the birth control because I've done all this. I've done all the physical stuff so far. I think you can do that part. Right. And I trusted him that he would. Yeah. I got pregnant with number 5. And I was like, oh, wow, here we go. And there was a 4.5-year gap and I got pregnant again, just as I was getting ready to put my youngest in kindergarten. So I thought, here we go again. Yeah. That happened 3 times. I got pregnant. 3 times after I told him I was done. Right. And finally, and one of them was an emergency C-section where myself and my baby almost died. It was very scary. They did a C-section with no anesthesia. I was literally strapped on the table and cut open with no painkiller. So you can imagine she was going to die. There was no heart rate for about 6 minutes. And they were like, we got to get her out. We got to get her out right now. Are you okay with this? And what was I going to say? No. Yeah. Yeah. So they literally just cut me open. And that was very traumatic for me. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I felt like I was being disemboweled. Like it was like Braveheart or something. Yeah. Yeah. Awful. Anyway, the long story short of it is that I ended up having three more children after I told them I was done. And they were not my choices. Of course, I love my children. I would I'd never give them back. I can't. I love them to pieces. I love them all. Yeah. But I wasn't being listened to. Right. No one was listening to me. Right. When I said, I'm at my wit's end. I can't handle this. Right. I said, some people are built for this and they just have baby after baby and they love it. And that's what they want to do. It's not what I want to do. And I told him that. I said, please, can we be done? And he just didn't listen. Right. So I was angry about that, but there were many other things that I was angry about. And without going into detail, I just will say that I felt like I had been stifled for decades. Right. Never allowed to really express how I felt without being told to be quiet. Right. And being squelched. Right. And quit complaining. And what's the matter with you? You're a spoiled brat. Yeah. My dad said that to me one time when I told him what was going on at home. He said, you're such a spoiled brat. And I said, how am I a spoiled brat? He said, you have a husband who doesn't drink. He doesn't beat you. He doesn't beat the kids. He doesn't this and that. And I said, okay, not according to your definition of that, but I had my own. I had a different definition of abuse, right? And some of it did some of it did entail some of those things early on. Now, we went to counseling, and my husband really did change.
Right.
He never did. Once we did that and I threatened to leave, that was early on in our marriage. He said it would never happen again, and it never did. But he turned it was a different type of abuse from that point on.
Right.
And so I said, if you want to call me a spoiled brat because I don't want to live my life feeling like it's not my life.
Right.
It's not even anything that I would have chosen for myself.
Right.
Then I guess I'm a spoiled brat.
Yeah.
So be it. I guess that's what I am.
Right. And didn't you say that, weren't you told at one point, like, were you the black sheep of the family? Were you, and when everyone was young, were you like the one they just couldn't control? Did I hear that right?
Right. They would probably say one of my sisters was the black sheep because she actually did.
Oh, that's right.
Some things that were not okay according to my parents. But I was the one who was the most outspoken, and they just didn't know what to do with me. My mom and dad said, "You're different. You're not in the mold. We don't know what to do with you." Because I would try to say, "Please listen to me. I have something to say about this." They couldn't deal with that. So they would just send me to the corner, literally say, "Sit in the corner until you can come out and say you're sorry."
Yeah.
And I would sit there for hours and hours and hours. And my mom would say, "Don't you want to come out and say you're sorry?" And I'd say, "I'm not sorry. I didn't do anything wrong. All I did was try to tell you how I feel about this, and you won't let me. And I'm not sorry for that." And they were like, "What do we do with this child?
What are we going to do to control her?" Well, I thought what was funny is, and so after the story of, like you say, your father didn't come from royalty. He doesn't follow the lineage that's needed. Everybody adored him because he was like the first convert apostle. And that was like, it's kind of like Donald Trump. It's like, what? You're not a politician? You must be the, please, I'm not comparing the two, but it's that like odd man out, that odd man out. So we're going to make him an apostle, but now what are we going to do with him? Because
he actually was never an apostle.
He wasn't? He was a 70.
They did not allow him to be an apostle. And I think it's because I think he was just a little bit too much of a maverick for them.
Okay. Do you think he had a little bit of Uchtdorf? Did he ever come across as, like the firing of Uchtdorf? I mean, to me, it was so obvious. It was like, I'm bringing on my bro here. And so we got to get rid of this guy that everybody loves. And I feel like they did that with Holland too, because everybody was like, whatever. When's Jeffrey going to talk at conference? Because everybody loved his conference talks. So then they were like, oh yeah, you want to play that game? Jeffrey's going to talk on Saturday morning at 9 a.m. when everybody's at a soccer game, So they have a way of, if there's somebody that's getting a little bit too, like, with the fan base, popular, they have a little bit of like, we're going to knock you down because, you're not the prophet. So interesting.
Yeah. And there was one of the apostles that did not like my dad, and they just butt heads all the time.
Interesting.
All the time.
What was his biggest thing that they kind of considered him a maverick? What was his thing?
Well, okay. When he was mission president, he didn't really follow the handbook. He just kind of looked at it and went, I don't think I'm going to do this my way, and so he had the missionaries kind of breaking the rules. They were baptizing way more than they should have. They were not preparing these baptisms. They were just rogue. And my dad was all for it. You've heard of the baseball baptisms and soccer baptisms or whatever. That's what they were doing. They were going out into the fields and getting the Mexican field workers and saying, if you get baptized today, we'll give you'll have this beautiful church you get to go to, and it's really, people are well-to-do, and they'll take care of you. You can, if you can't pay, we have money that we can give you and your family. They would just entice them in, making promises that they probably had no intention of keeping. And then get baptized, and they were baptizing by the thousands.
So he was there's his narcissism coming out, because he was a numbers guy. Let me send this report back to Salt Lake, and they're going to see.
I'm number one in baptizing. And his buddy, who he had actually baptized years and years before, was also a mission president in Washington at the same time. And they had a bet going on who could baptize the most. And so my dad he's a terrible loser, the worst kind of loser on the planet. And he was not going to be outdone by anybody. And he just smashed it. And he had those missionaries hauling in, they were driving vans and piling these field workers in the van and then taking them over to the river and just baptizing. They hadn't been taught nothing. They didn't even know what they were joining. Terrible.
Oh my
so God. He was in trouble for that. They sent Vaughn J. Featherstone out to lay down the law with my dad. And by the time Elder Featherstone left, they were on the same page, meaning my dad had kind of talked him into it and said, hey, you know what, we're just doing what the Lord told us to do. And we are, you know, President Kimball had made some prophecy that baptisms would be by the thousands. And he talked about the seed of the Lamanite. These are the Lamanites. All we're doing is we're performing the baptism, and then we leave it up to the ward that they're in to fellowship them in. That's their problem, not ours. They're children of God. He's not going to turn his back on them. Well, they weren't staying in. You know, they might come for a couple of weeks, and then when they figured out nobody really cared about them and they couldn't speak English. So it was just kind of a mess. He got in trouble for that. He did have a following that just loved my dad. And he was a big missionary, you know, tool for the church. He himself had been baptized.
He's a convert. Now he's a 70. Now he's a mission president. He's baptizing hundreds and thousands. What a great story. What a great Paul H. Dunn story.
Right. Exactly. Paul H. Dunn. Exactly. And then we had a Packer who just wanted no part of this and was furious about it. And, you know, basically he was the reason why my dad never got called, never went into the apostleship. We figured that out a long time ago, that he just basically said, no elder rector, and he's not going to be an apostle. He doesn't have what it takes. He's too popular with the people, but he's not keeping our rules. And didn't happen.
That man, the more I learn about that man, I'm putting him right next to Brigham Young in the evil leaders. You know, there's the Hitler, then there's Brigham Young, then there's, I mean, that's terrible to say, but I mean, just every time you turn around and you're listening to something, there's like 6 degrees of separation from Boyd K. Packer. And it's just astonishing the hard mindset of this man and the power that he had. And I love the story of oh golly, who was it? Oh, I think it was his brother, the Packer that worked for the Salt Lake Times, that kind of
Ben Packer.
And how he kind of told the story of how, you know, oh no, it was Benson. It was Benson who worked for in Arizona newspaper, and he went and interviewed Oakes and said, now, you know, so why are you letting Packer, you know, say these things? He goes, well, you can't control a grizzly bear. And then Benson, you know, reported that, and he was like, I never said that. And then he says, you either, you know, take that back, or I'm going to blow the whistle on all you boys. But so everybody knew you couldn't control him, and he was power hungry, and he also
wasn't nice. He wasn't a nice person.
No, and he had a chip on his shoulder, you know, and it was just, it's interesting. But mean. Just
my dad used to say that. He'd tell us, he said, you know, you can keep all the commandments, you can do everything you're supposed to do, you can have some high calling. If you're not a nice person, you don't deserve to go to heaven. He would say that, and we all knew who he was talking about.
Exactly.
They just didn't get along. So
So tell us. I love that you tell us the story of the experience that you had, that after 33 years of marriage, now you've got kids that are grown. You probably had did you have grandchildren at the time? I don't even know, 33 years times 2.
Yes, I did.
You know, so I mean, you're like stuck deep in this relationship. And I remember that you told the story of how, you know, you went to your dad, you said this isn't going to work, and he's like, you just go home and stick with it. You know, like you said, you're spoiled, you don't appreciate what you have. And I'm sure you even felt that at times. You thought, oh geez, what am I not doing right that I'm not happy, you know?
Sure.
And but tell the story of what happened where you finally said, look, I only have a few short years. No one knows the truth of what happens after death, but I think I'm going to try and enjoy this life a little bit. So
the only one we really know about.
Yes. So tell us how that happened.
Okay. Wow. I was just thinking about this today as I was walking this morning. I was talking to a friend and I sort of got off on this. I said, you know what? I blew up my world a couple of times. The first time was when I decided to get a divorce. And, our family was one of the, the core families of our ward.
Oh, yeah.
We had a large family. We'd been there for 25 years. We knew everybody. We had held callings, all of us, my husband and I. He had been in the bishopric a couple of times, and I had been, gospel doctrine teacher, Relief Society teacher. I'd been, young women. We were one of the core families of the ward, and everyone thought everything was great. Most people, unless they were really close to me.
Right.
If I had close friends, but most people didn't have a clue.
Right.
And, I had this pressure cooker in my head thinking, what happened was I woke up on my 52nd birthday and I couldn't get out of bed. I just broke down and sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. And I thought, I could live another 30 years. I was 52.
Yeah.
I could live to be 82. My mother, did.
Yeah.
And I thought, I can't do it like this. Right. I cannot face another 30 years like this. I have got to do something. I've got to. And I was bawling out of control for like 2 weeks straight. I could not function. And my husband was like, what is wrong with you? You're crying all the time. What's wrong? Are you having a nervous breakdown?
Yeah.
And I said, maybe I am, but I can't do this anymore. Right. I said, can we just have a talk about this?
Right.
It wasn't our first talk.
Right.
We had talked about divorce since year 2.
Right.
Periodically, because our relationship was so rocky.
Right.
And I said, how long we have been working on this, and it's not any better. We're just so tired that we just don't even deal with it anymore. We used to fight about it. Now we just throw our hands up in frustration and said, you're not happy. I'm not happy. And I know the kids aren't happy because they see that we're not happy.
Right.
One of my daughters said, Mom, I've never seen you and Dad kiss. I've never seen you kiss.
Wow.
And she was, I don't know, 20 when she said that.
Yeah.
And anyway, that talk that we had was the very first time that he ever really listened to me.
Oh.
The first time. He sat there, and it was if he took off the blinders or the rose-colored glasses for that one discussion, and he heard me, and it was like, you mean to tell me you haven't been happy this whole time? And I said, I haven't.
Right.
You know this. I have talked to you so many times about this. You have seen me. I spent years crying in the bathroom. I burned through my contact lenses with my acidic tears probably a dozen times.
Yeah.
The doctor kept saying, what's going on with your contact lenses? And I was like, I don't know. They would literally fall apart because I had acidic tears all the time. When you're really upset, there's more acid in your tears. I found this out later.
Wow.
Anyway, I said, so can we just part as friends? Is that possible? Could we just do that? We don't have to fight. We don't have to make a big ugly scene. I don't need a lawyer. We'll just talk about it and figure it out on our own. Can we just do that? I said, I won't be hateful. We can stay friends.
Right.
And he really listened to me.
Wow.
And he said, is that what you really, really, really want? And I said, please, I'm begging you. I don't think I can make it for another year. And he listened and he said, okay.
That's amazing.
Well,
now, the thing about this is you weren't in any kind of a position. It wasn't like, I love the quote from Mad Men, the movie, where his wife started having an affair with the senator, and he commented to her and he said, "Oh, so you got a lifeboat before you jump ship." And I don't know why that stuck with me, but I mean, you were not financially independent.
No.
You were not set up to like, okay, I've got my master's degree now. I know I can fend for myself. There was nothing in place that said, now's the time for you to get out, Lila. You can, you're like, I don't know what's going to happen, but I know I can't do this anymore.
Right. My youngest child was 11. And I had a job designing fabric at the time, which I'm still doing.
Right.
And it didn't make enough for me to be self-sufficient at all, but I was doing enough. I had a little something that I could lean on, but it wasn't, I was not in a well set up position to do it.
Right.
I just knew I couldn't do it anymore. I was at that point. It was like, either commit me into a hospital because I'm losing it.
Right.
Or we need to change this.
Right.
And he listened. And then he ran off to the bishop. And he told me, my wife, doesn't want to stay married, la-di-da. And then, so about a month after he went to the bishop, I have no idea what they talked about. I get a call from the bishop saying, "Can you come in and let's have a little chat?" And I thought, oh geez, here it comes. I'm going to be like, he's going to be, you took covenants and blah, blah. I was going to get the same talk I'd gotten from my dad and from everybody else. And so I just knew that, and I thought that's what's going to happen. Well, I went in expecting that.
Yeah.
And that is not what happened at all. I had an amazing experience with him. He looked at me, he said, "I've been praying about you and your situation for the past month since your husband came in." And he said, "I have a message for you from God." And I thought, oh, he's going to say,
here we go.
And he said, "You need to be happy. You haven't been happy for a long time." And he said, "You need to be happy. I don't care what it takes. I don't care what you have to do." He said, "I'm not telling you what to do.
Yeah.
But you figure that out and do it."
Right.
Of course, I dissolved into tears. I couldn't believe someone was actually hearing me.
Oh my gosh. That really, that shocks me.
As a woman, for the first time, having a man validate how I felt.
Right.
And I thought, okay, he gets it.
Right.
And he said, "I'm not telling you what to do, but I'm telling you, you need to be happy. So figure it out." And then he gave me a blessing. And, my beliefs have changed since then.
Right.
And I can see it differently now. But at the time, I was just hanging on his every word.
Right.
And he said, "The Lord sees your sacrifices and has accepted it. And you are free to go."
Oh, what a beautiful man. Why can't we multiply this person and put him in every ward?
I know. I think it shocked him because after he said it, he was like, "Wow, I don't know if I should have said that." And I said, "Well, you said it. Don't be taking that back. You said it." And he said, "I did say it. And that's what I felt from the Spirit." So I went home and I didn't say a word about that because I knew my husband would be furious, but we had this talk. And so he did know where I stood. And I just kept it quiet. And a few more months went by and I was sort of like, I had a job and I was kind of tucking a little bit of money away thinking, I got to find an apartment. I got it. Cause I knew I wasn't going to get the house. Right. I knew that I was dealing with someone that I knew how he would respond. It would be, "You're the one that wants a divorce. I'm keeping the house and the kids are staying with me." And bye-bye. So I knew what that was going to be. So I did find a place and it was literally right down the street. It was in our ward. It was in the basement of someone's house. I knew the people that owned it. They were in our ward, right next door to my parents' house in our ward.
Oh my God. Wait, there's way too much stuff going on in that ward to have that. I mean, there was no secrets going to be kept at that point. You are
no, my dad and mom were in our ward. They were living in our ward at that time. So
okay, but you are living in the basement of the neighbors of your parents, but you were able to keep it a secret from your dad for 2 years.
I kept it
I can't believe that there wasn't a high council picnic
2 years.
Where
nobody said anything. No, my dad was old at the time. He was so old. My mom had Alzheimer's.
Oh,
My
okay.
dad was starting to really fade. His memory wasn't quite right.
So they probably did tell him, he just didn't remember.
Well, I didn't tell him, but I
No,
thought
yeah.
he doesn't need this.
No.
It's going to be the worst. He doesn't need this. Every single one of us are his kids, except one who died, my brother who died.
Yeah.
Everyone else of his 9 kids had gotten a divorce, except me.
Amazing.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
and how many have left the church?
let's see. I have 3 siblings left in.
Oh, girls?
They're gone. Girls. They're all 3 girls.
All girls. Interesting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's really interesting because, not telling my parents drove my husband crazy my ex-husband. He just could not. He hated it because they came over every Sunday. We all met together as a family on Sunday in my husband's house, which was my house, used to be my house with him. My parents would come over for dinner and we would act like one big happy family. My kids were in on it. Nobody said a word to my parents. And part of it was they were kind of out of it anyway. My dad had been in a car accident and my mom had Alzheimer's, so she didn't really know anything.
Right.
My dad had lost his memory and he literally, he knew who we were, but he couldn't tell you one thing about the Book of Mormon. He couldn't tell you one thing about anything. He'd forgotten everything. Wow. So for me to tell him, hey, we got a divorce was just more than I thought he needed to deal with.
Yeah, exactly.
And it kind of made it easier on me because I thought he'll just lose it and get mad at me. And every time he sees me, he'll be mad at me.
Yeah.
And finally my husband said, if you don't tell him, I'm going to tell him. So I did. I got right down, I kneeled down in front of him and I said, Dad, I want you to know that, we got divorced 2 years ago. And he said, what? And I said, we got divorced 2 years ago. And he said, well, you're still together at the house having dinner. And I said, I know, because we chose to not make an ugly scene of it. We decided we were going to be kind to each other and be friends. And he said, well, he said, that's amazing. He said, it kind of makes sense now. He was putting it all together because I wasn't ever at church. I went to a different ward. At some point, I moved to Lehigh 6 months after we got separated. I moved to Lehigh. It was just too incestuous in my ward.
I was going to say, that's just crazy.
It was just too much. And I moved out, and so I went to that ward. But my dad did not, he was finally putting it all together. And he said, well, it seems like you're still friends. And I said, we are friends, Dad. Yeah. And he said, that's all that matters. He just seemed content with that.
You're thinking I could have done this 20 years ago if I would have known that's what was going to happen.
My daughter told me that. My oldest daughter said, Mom, you should have done this 20 years ago. When I told her we decided to get a divorce, she said, finally, it's about time. Yeah. And I thought, why? She said, you thought you were doing us all a favor? You weren't. We saw.
The message, there's the message, people. You think you're staying together for the children. You're not.
No.
They're not. Well, they're so conscious.
Not in my case.
They
told me I should have done it before. They didn't like all the bickering, all the fighting, all of the discontent. They could tell we weren't in love with each other. They knew it. And it doesn't teach them. All they see is a bad example. Yeah. They don't see what marriage should look like. And they deserve that. They deserve to see that. Yeah. So, you're really not doing. So back to what I was originally off.
Yeah.
I blew up my marriage because I had to survive. It was survival for me. I finally chose me over the family, my kids, my parents, my reputation, what people thought of me at church.
Yeah. All those little outside things that keep people.
I just realized, you know what? None of that matters. I need to be happy inside, and I'm not. I've got to get out of this. Right. And whatever they want to think is fine. The rumor mill went crazy.
Oh, I'm sure.
They decided I had done all these things. He had done things. They had all these rumors. None of them were true. One thing I can honestly say, there was no scandal. Nobody cheated on anyone. Nobody broke our covenants. That did not happen. We just did not work.
Right.
And even if
Right.
that had happened, because I'm thinking maybe there's people listening that think, well, I did do this or he did do this in my marriage, in their
Right.
marriage. Even if that did happen, if you're not happy, there's a
Exactly.
reason why people cheat. There's a reason why people do things in their marriages, and it's because something's wrong.
Right.
And they're not getting what they need. And that doesn't make someone a bad person.
Well, especially like you say, out of 9 children, almost all of them have been divorced. I'm sure there are 9 different reasons why. There isn't one recipe that says, oh, you forgot to put in 2 tablespoons of oil. That's why you got divorced. There isn't an explanation. It is an individual choice.
Yeah.
So how long were you independent before your husband was diagnosed with cancer?
We got divorced. Our divorce was final in 2014, July of 2014. He got diagnosed in December of 2015 or January of 2016, somewhere in there.
Gosh.
I had no idea none of us, we did not see it coming. Had no idea he was going to be sick.
Right.
So when that happened, that it just threw a new dynamic in everything. And he did chemo, he tried all sorts of alternative methods. It just wasn't working. And finally he became so ill and my kids were trying to take care of him at the house. And they all had their own lives and school. Right. So finally I thought, you know what? I got to go in there and take over. Somebody's got to take over.
Yeah.
So I saw him not able to function, and I thought, okay, because they had moved a bed right into the family room on the main floor, and he was in that bed so they could get him to the toilet and he could be amongst everyone, and I thought, okay, I got to go over there. So I moved out of my condo and I moved back home with him. And that was, that was hard because I felt like, it was just hard all the way around. It was hard because he was sick. It was hard to watch him like that.
Right.
He's so unable to take care of himself and so dependent on me. And he didn't want to be dependent on me.
No.
He was mortified.
Right.
Dependent on me. But it needed to be, somebody had to do it. I knew it had to be.
You hear that story, you hear that story, and it is an interesting dynamic when that happens, but I think it says a lot for the people that are involved. I mean, Carolyn Pearson's, same story of going back and serving and loving just a human that you love and that you have history with. And but I also so appreciated your honesty with this, the fact that he wanted to do alternative treatments that costs money that insurance doesn't pay for. Right. When he finally passed on, you had debt, if I remember correctly. I mean, so so here you are saying, I need my independence. I need my freedom. I'm going to get a condo. I have a job, a simple job that's giving me the money that I need. Now I'm being called back. And even that you got left with debt.
Nothing. Yes. Pretty much. He had a little bit of life insurance that was spread across, all the kids. And he gave me a little bit because I was still taking care of the youngest, 2 youngest kids.
So some kind of child support.
So it was, like social security. It was a survivor.
Yeah.
Had that and there was a little bit that I mean, we're talking a little bit. It wasn't it wasn't even enough for a month, of living. But that sort of, that's what I got. And I didn't care. Honestly, I didn't care about the money. It wasn't about the money for me. Yeah. It was about my soul and my spirit and surviving life.
And I think that's the point, is it doesn't matter. If you were to make a list and you could list all the reasons why you should stay in a marriage that isn't working, it doesn't have to be violence, doesn't have to be abuse, doesn't have to be, like you say, cheating. This isn't working. And then on the other side, there was all you could write down was, I'm not happy. I deserve to be happy.
Yeah.
That's it. You don't have to
That's
have,
enough.
and that's enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people who tell you otherwise are
Yeah.
either pretending to be happy,
Right.
or they have some wonderful relationship with their spouse. And I champion that. I cheerlead that. I'm grateful that there are people that have those relationships and they're so happy to be there and they wouldn't want to leave. My mother was like that. She loved my dad, would never have wanted to leave.
Right.
But for the rest of us who feel guilt and shame for wanting to be happy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
See, I thought, oh no, you have to sacrifice this life because of the next life.
Exactly.
And you can be miserable here, but you have the promise of something wonderful there. And I thought, I don't even know what that looks like. They can't tell me what that looks like.
Well, especially because the way it was laid out was, you will be so happy because you will have 45 million more children to take care of.
Right. Yeah. You get to have babies for the rest of eternity.
Yes.
And be married to your spouse for eternity.
Yes.
You can barely stand right now, but you're going to be together and it's going to be great.
No.
I mean, they couldn't lay out anything that was like even the remotely appealing to me. It made me think, okay, yes, I can stick it out. I can do this. Like some
give me something. Give me something.
Yeah. I thought, tell me something good, because all I'm seeing is, if I'm a mother in heaven, I don't get to talk to my babies, my children.
Yes.
They don't even get to pray to me.
I don't even know who you are.
No idea who I am. I can't say anything to them.
Right.
My world is pumping out spirits, man. Just keep on pumping out, and we're going to populate all these worlds. That does not sound fun to me, nor it's like, come on, you guys, that all you've got?
Yeah. Come up with there will be infinite amounts of cheesecake. And
give me something. Yeah, you can eat whatever you want.
Fabulous. I mean, give me something, But I always think about that, because I always think, speaking of narcissists, I always I'm waiting, and I don't know. I think Russell Nelson has a huge narcissist problem.
Oh,
just once, I would like to hear him say, "Let me tell you about my wife and what she did for me to be a cardiac surgeon, to have 9 children, and what she sacrificed and gave to our family." Just once. I want to hear her talk
something nice about your wife.
About her.
Yeah.
All about her, not about him, Well, let's close up with tell us a little bit about your fabric designs and how you found happiness, and let's all end on a happy note.
Okay. Here. How much time do we have?
We have 3 minutes.
Oh, okay.
2.3.
Well, long story short is, after I got divorced, after my husband passed away, after my father passed away the year after that, because I moved right in with my dad and took care of him the last year of his life.
Yeah.
After that was over, I had the faith crisis of, it just went, the whole thing just gone. And that was the next thing, the big blow up was to walk away from the church and just say, bye, I'm done.
Right.
And I, turned in my resignation, done. So in my world, everything blew up, everything that everyone thinks is the most important thing blew up. But I'm the happier than I've ever been in my life. It's like night and day. I couldn't be happier. I mean, I'm sure I could be, but I'm so pleased to be where I am. So I started fabric design 2008. So I've been doing it for several years, and I love it. It's my passion. It's what I love to do. Does it make me rich? No, but I really love it, and it's just what it's my favorite job. And I also work other jobs just to make ends meet. I'm not rich. Right. I don't live in a big house. I live in a tiny little house. It's like on the wrong side of the tracks, and I don't care.
Who cares? You found yourself.
I don't care.
Yeah.
Everything is so simple now. I still have my 7 kids, and most of them still in the church. I have 2 that are out, one that's teetering, but we don't argue about it. We don't talk about it. They respect me. I respect them. We're able to just make it work. Just like my husband and I, once we divorced, we made it work. We decided to be friends.
Right.
I think that's the key. You don't have to be hateful,
That's right. That's
everyone.
right.
Let
You're
them be
still
what
a
they are.
family. You're still a
Yes.
family. And this idea that you would shun a family member because they believe in a different religion than you do is so ironic and so completely
Not Christian.
opposite of what Jesus would say.
Yeah,
if you
it's the
believe,
most unchristian thing.
yeah.
And
And
the fact
everything
that
that you've gone through
Yeah.
and everything that you've experienced, and yet those kids can still come together, and even though they all don't have the same feelings, that is the best
Right.
happy ever after story that I
Yeah.
think you could have. Where
It's-
can we find your fabric designs? Is it
I don't even have a website.
Okay.
I sell them on Etsy in my own little shop. My company sells for me, but
Okay.
I also have my own little shop on Etsy where I sell, because I have a stash that's huge in my garage.
right?
And
Right.
it's Etsy, it's Lila Tueller Designs.
Oh, okay.
So you can just go in and see kind of, some of my fabric in there. You could go on, I work for Riley Blake Designs, and they have, a website that shows what my latest collection is right now.
Okay. Okay.
So you can look at that. But yeah, I'm not a good businesswoman. I'm a terrible
Yeah.
business.
Yeah.
I kind of need someone to run it for me, because I just want to do the fun part. the
Exactly.
creative part.
Hello. Thank you, sister. That's exactly where I'm at. Just let me do the fun part and somebody else do the books. Somebody
That's
else do the marketing.
Exactly
Somebody
right.
else do
I'm
all that
just not
stuff.
good at that. And I'm not good
Right.
at social media. I'm not good at any of that. And I'm okay with that. So I could do a lot more.
Yeah.
But I kind of like where I'm at. I just sort of live a very simple life, which I am fine with.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you, Lila. Thank you so much
Renee.
for sharing your story. And
You're so sweet.
I just love that you had the guts to walk away from a 33-year-old marriage that was just not working. That's
Yeah.
all. That's all, folks. No.
I tried, man. I tried. For
Yeah, you
33
did.
years, I tried. No
Yeah.
one can tell me. I had sisters that had their divorces, and they were like, "Don't do it, Lila. Don't do it. Your kids will hate you, and you're going to be sorry you did it, and you're going to regret it." And I said, "That's what you're doing. I'm
Yeah.
not going to do that. My
Yeah.
kids aren't going to hate me for this."
Right.
I just could not go that way. And
Yeah.
and I did it anyway, and I found out that's their story. That's not my story.
That's right. Oh,
So
I love it.
make it what you want it to be.
Make it what you want it to be. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And I'm
for
going to
having
be,
me.
I'm going to be up there in your part of the world, and I'm going to
Oh
stalk
yeah,
you.
you're coming
So,
up for the next.
yeah, I'm coming up. I'm coming up for the witches activities. I want the world to know
All
that
that.
if you want a great witch party to go to Utah. I know, seems ironic, but it's true. They have the best witches activities. So I'm
That's
bringing my girls up. So we're gonna witch
Oh,
party.
good.
So.
Okay, I didn't know about those witch things.
Oh yeah, Gardner's Village, South Jordan will be there. All right, thank you so
Okay.
much.
You're wearing a
Thank
sweater
you
that
so
was
much.
selected for you
Bye-bye.
by the people in this room from a pile of stuff.